Democrat comedy. Comedy is hard work. It's all about timing and delivery. You either have a natural knack for it, or you don't. I thought it would be funny, for example, to make one of these bamboo water fountain healing videos, and while it's playing, with the water coming out of the bamboo pipe, I would switch to the scene from Rambo First Blood Part 2, where the water pipe instead is carrying this disgusting sewer slime from the American POWs down to the pit where Rambo is hanging, awaiting his torture by the evil Russians. And I thought that would be really funny. Now that's comedy. Speaking of comedy, look at this whacked out prayer vigil that the Democratic Party has organized to mark the anniversary of January 6th. This raises a lot of questions. What are they praying to? Democrats hate prayer. They work so hard to get prayer out of schools, and they're out here praying for what? Who are they praying to? Are they praying to Saint Hillary? Are they praying to Satan? Who is the object of their devotion here? It's interesting that Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, is officiating at this prayer vigil. Here's an op-ed written by Newt Gingrich, printed at Newsweek. It's interesting that this is nowhere on Newsweek's front page. You have to actually search for Newt's column. Democrats are making a mistake focusing on January 6, he says. Newt observes, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats seem happy with their totally partisan Select Committee on January 6. In the world of big government socialist Democrats, the riot last January 6th is the best way to smear Republicans as unpatriotic. Just as the Russian dossier, the Ukraine phone call, and virtually every act of political theater to defame Republicans failed, this too will soon become an absurdity. Now here's the meat of Newt's op-ed. As a former Speaker of the House, I know well that it is the Speaker's responsibility to oversee the protection and defense of the Capitol. It is clear that Speaker Pelosi failed to do so, and it's going to be deeply uncomfortable for Democrats to talk about that. So I think this is the explanation we have for Nancy Pelosi officiating over this prayer vigil. She wants you to look closely at Donald Trump because she doesn't want anyone to look at her negligence in securing the Capitol from any possible invasion by angry protesters. Now this prayer vigil is pretty bizarre. It's about the funniest thing that the House Democrats have done since Joe Biden took office. But Vice President Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have a comedy routine all their own. Vice President Kamala Harris noted,
certain dates echo throughout history, including dates that instantly remind all who have lived through them where they were and what they were doing when our democracy came under assault. Dates that occupy not only a place on our calendars, but a place in our collective memory. December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021.
After she was finished speaking, President of the United States, Joe Biden, stepped up to the presidential podium. He had a nearly 25-minute speech of which he attacked former President Donald Trump an amazing 16 times. Remember, Joe Biden was going to restore dignity and class to the Oval Office. He was a calm, polite, dignified elder statesman, a gentleman who would restore America's image abroad, secure better trade deals than Donald Trump, and he was going to shut down the coronavirus. Remember that? Unfortunately for Joe Biden, the best part of his speech happened behind him. Watch this incredible sequence. You will not believe this.
Madam Vice President, my fellow Americans, to State the obvious. 1 year ago today,
Kamala Harris has finished her 8-minute speech. Watch what happens. Look behind President Biden here.
Madam Vice President, my fellow Americans, to state the obvious, 1 year ago today.
Did you see that? He says, Madam Vice President, and she has no idea what he's doing. She thinks that he's angry with her, and he's calling her back to stand there with him while he attacks Trump for 25 minutes. So she turns around, looking at Biden like, do you want me to come back to the podium, you old creep? And then she realizes that she doesn't actually have to stay there in the chamber. And then she resumes her departure and gets out of there. This is the most hilarious thing she has done as vice president. It's a replication of her video with the children at the Naval Observatory, where she just couldn't wait to get away from the kids and leave them there after she had done her bit in the video. Here, she knows that Joe Biden is going to spend 25 minutes looking like a complete fool, and she doesn't want to be standing beside him nodding along. Now remember, when Mike Pence was Donald Trump's vice president, it didn't matter if Trump was going to speak for 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours. Mike Pence had better be standing there alongside Trump, nodding along with whatever he's saying. But Kamala Harris operates by different rules. She doesn't work for Joe Biden, and she doesn't respect Joe Biden. So she doesn't have to stand there. Her work is done. After an 8-minute speech telling us that January 6th is equivalent to Pearl Harbor and 9/11, she's like, I'm going to go back to my residence, and there's a margarita with my name on it. Hold my calls. And the last thing she wanted to do was support her boss. Now, I know you don't have the patience to sit through Biden's entire 25-minute attack on President Trump. There's only one thing that I want to focus on here.
Finally, the third big lie being told by a former president and his supporters is that the mob who sought to impose their will through violence are the nation's true patriots. Is that what you thought when you looked at the mob ransacking the Capitol, destroying property, literally defecating in the hallways, rifling through the desks of senators and representatives, hunting down members of Congress? Patriots? Not in my view.
So President Biden seems to have a math problem. A minimum of 100,000 peaceful Trump supporters attended the Save America rally on January 6th to hear President Trump speak at the opposite end of the Washington Mall from the Capitol. Around 50 to 100 people have been charged with entering the Senate building. If 100,000 people carried out an insurrection on the orders of outgoing President Donald Trump, there would be no Democrats in Washington running hearings and complaining about the anniversary of that day. Probably the best indicator that I can see today of the seriousness with which Democrats are holding a solemn memorial to January 6th is that they cited Fox News host Sean Hannity to come testify. Sean Hannity is a talk show host, and they think he's a leader of an insurrection to replace the government of the United States. They can't possibly be serious. These people are a joke, and that's why I call this Democrat comedy. Thank you.